Good
Yes.
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome back to People Rising.
Good, good to
We've
see
been
y'all.
gone a few weeks. It's good to see you guys.
I missed y'all. This is I didn't realize how much of a community this kind of became. So shout out to all the folks who are on all the other channels watching this. And please make sure you're love liking and sharing, and please tag Linwood and Peter when you're saying nice things. Okay. I didn't
Now,
realize
when you're saying unnice things, only the
only
nice
nice
things will
things.
be
That's
tagged.
it. Well, hello, Cindy. You see what I'm saying? These are my
Let me
people.
put
My
'em on. Oh,
people
there
are
we
here.
go. I'm not,
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing there. Oh, look at that. Hello.
Hello,
Hi,
Cindy.
Cindy.
She
I like
is
that. I like that
the
profile
color.
pic.
She's actually Cindy actually owns a brand, and she's actually considered the queen of joy. She has an entire community behind her. So when I say I bring the
Wow.
folks, yeah. So I'm so excited that she's here. Thank you so much for supporting us.
Welcome, Joy. Welcome. I mean, Cindy. She's a queen
She
of
can take
joy.
it exactly. She'll take that too.
um, Peter, how are you?
I'm doing good. It's been an exciting week. I'm starting to get some momentum on my project, which is really exciting.
Hi, Katina.
Hi, Katina. She's a regular also. Hey, Katina.
And did you have a good holiday weekend?
I did. I was in San Francisco. My childhood friend's daughter was had her bat mitzvah, and
Oh, nice.
there was a group of guys who were really close in our 20s, and we remained close, but we haven't seen each other the last 5 years. So it was just wonderful to be back together.
Oh, wow.
That
And
is
next weekend,
fantastic.
I'm going to see him again for a wedding in Omaha. Yeah.
Wow.
That
Wow.
bat mitzvah will probably be more fun than the wedding.
I doubt it. I doubt it.
Okay, all right. I when I was 13, I went to a bar mitzvah for a friend of mine, and I'd never been to anything like that before, so it was filled with all kinds of sights and sounds I'd never heard before. When we were supposed to be praying, I was like looking around the synagogue or whatever. But the party the party was insane. I mean, it was amazing. I still, I mean, it happened when I was 13, and I still remember how much fun I had.
They work well. This one was nice because they had two parties. They had the grown up party upstairs and the kids party downstairs. So I
Oh,
was a fan.
nice.
Oh,
Yeah,
Nice.
oh, we were all together at my friend's.
that's the way it normally is. I was impressed by it.
That's awesome. I don't know. Did I share?
Oh, hi, Dr. Michelle.
Welcome,
Happy Friday.
Dr. Michelle. So we are talking about our last few weeks,
Yeah.
were the few weeks before we were on vacation, which was nice, a nice vacation. We talked about change fatigue with Ed Hansen. We
Yes.
talked about office politics, right?
Yes.
With Niven Postma. And we also talked about, there was another, I can't remember. We didn't have a guest that week. It was
The roundup.
it's slipping my mind right now. I just can't recall the
One of
word.
my therapy sessions.
It'll come back. Yeah. I mean, we had
Yeah.
great sessions.
Yeah.
They were great
Yeah, they were
sessions.
good.
It's the words that are escaping me to
That's
describe what we talk about. But it'll come back in just a moment. So we're here to talk about those things. I'm sorry, I'm having some technical problems over here.
no
Okay,
problem.
there we go. So what are your reflections on some of your reflections on some of the things that we talked about and how we use those things? I can't wait to hear them.
Well, I had a couple. So first off, um, in terms of reflecting on, so the two areas that I wanted to kind of go back to, the first one being office politics, and the next one is around change management. And I'm using this as a way to propel myself to prepare for the month of June. So we're in a new month, and this is a great time to kind of take some of those lessons learned, apply it so you can do better next time. That's where I am. Okay. And so when we talked about office politics, we really dug into the perception, positioning, y'all, is I'm talking about um, your relationship to leadership, or your roles, and even some of the influence that a lot of people carry that are not traditional roles, like an admin or someone who's in a support role and things of that nature. And so I was thinking about some of the things that we covered in that discussion, the cultural differences that that was coming up that we had really dug into, but the cultural those aspects that are the things that are helping us to make decisions, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly, and that plays into politics. We talked about, as Black or African American women, and so for myself and my peers who are on this platform as well, and Kim Blue, and we talked about our experiences and always having to know and kind of master politics just so we can get our jobs done. So I thought that was for me one of the most impactful episodes that we had, because I didn't realize that. I mean, I understand that politics is a part of the beast, but there's so many people that don't, and they kind of fight against that instead of using it as an advantage. You know what I mean? Once you understand, like, this is the nature of any organization that you go into. And when people say politics doesn't work, is when you're not getting what you want out of it. Right? So it's really important to change the mindset and understand, like, this is the role that politics play, and this is how this is kind of what you need to do to kind of help yourself move your organization, your goals, etc., forward, and really making sure that you're always building on the relationships, because with politics, I think, is a lot more about the relationships you're making with some of these decision makers that kind of cause a lot of people to kind of run into walls. So office politics was really critical. And then change management, because there's an exhaustion with, hey Kim, with all the things that we've been doing. So we touched on that earlier. And what I didn't want to do was go into the second half of the year using the same methodologies that I was doing at the first half of the year. So I thought, this is a great way for me to pivot, and make some changes for the rest of the year. And that's literally what I was doing. Like, let me go back. I actually went back, and for y'all who have missed these sessions, go back and watch the replay. It's everywhere. And if you can't find it, you can go on one of my channels. It is there. Okay. So just make sure you go back. Yeah, definitely go back and dig into the replay, because that's what I did. I went back through my notes. I went through some of the replays, and I picked up on some of the things that, again, I could use for the second half of the year in the way that I was approaching change management, in the way that I was getting buy-in and feedback, just some of those areas. So those were the things that I wanted to, kind of share from what I've learned and what's next for me.
I just like to take a moment to just pay you a huge compliment. I just think that is awesome how you're modeling for people in your community, how to be self-aware and reflective, and, take this information and put it into practice. I think that's awesome.
Well, thank you. And seriously, for all of y'all who are, maybe you're new here, Cindy, I'm going to throw you out because I know you have a huge community. Literally, you can link to some of these videos, and I know there are members in your community who could benefit from that. Katina, same thing. Dr. Michelle, please make sure you're sharing these out. We're giving y'all free information. By the way, this thing here, this webinar that you're getting every week, is about a $2,000 value that you're getting for free. I'm just telling you, right? That's so we're sharing all of this incredibly useful and valuable information that you don't have to be a CHRO to use. Anyone in the organization can use it. So just make sure that you're digging into the information, use it for your own professional development, use what works. And then if it doesn't work for you, that's all right. Come back in the chat and tell us why it didn't.
That's awesome. I'm just going to drop. Oh, I did the wrong thing there. I wanted to drop. I want to drop these links. I'm going to drop links to the last programs in the chat.
Perfect.
So that is change fatigue. And don't let me stop you from because I'm gonna do what I can to make it easy for people while we're talking here. But what I think everything that you said was spot on. I mean, that office politics conversation was like,
yeah.
I mean, really, I think understanding the importance of relationships, and it's such a huge, I mean, I worked for 15 years in corporate America and was still operating kind of on the with a lack of awareness, about my own, kind of position in the organization.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons. It was just all kinds of different things impacting how I perceive myself and how I thought others in the organizations were, other people in the organization were perceiving me or not perceiving me. Right. And my biggest issue was simply, now this is actually a totally insane way. It would be hard to imagine that I could have thought of it this way, but I really kind of saw myself as somewhat invisible. Somewhat invisible. However, I was the most senior African American in the country, in the company.
Yeah, I get that.
Attending board meetings, meeting with the CFO, CEO, all the senior leadership team. I'm going to their office. They're coming to my office. And I just had a complete lack of perception about how other people in the organization would see me based on what they saw my participation in these type of things, right? Because from my perspective, I'm like the lowest person in the, so like most of the time, unless somebody speaks to me, I'm not talking. It's like, because I'm like the most junior person in the room. And I'm carrying that around with me, but other people in the organization simply see, hey, this guy is going to these board meetings. He's having conversations with directors. The CEO is actively seeking him out. He's getting called down there. You know what I mean? So I just had a complete, and I'm sure there are all kinds of reasons for that I can unpack in my therapy session.
Well, since you all are my therapy session, I totally relate to that. As you were saying that, the thought that came to my mind was a question that one of my parents asked me many moons ago. Do you want to be powerful or do you want to be influential? Do you know what the answer is? Go, Peter.
It was really interesting realization for me about politics. And on the one hand, I realized that my position as a CEO and white male one at that has shielded me from the necessity to think about politics and also the cost of that, right? For my own career going forward, but also for my lack of understanding with interacting with my employees. And since then, what I've realized is I have a very negative and manipulative understanding of the word politics. But as I thought about it and what Niven was, because that's not what she was talking about at all. It was more like framing and storytelling. And from that perspective, and I really, what I really appreciated the perspective that you all provided, because in an organization where there's power dynamics, it is, how is it that you can present information in such a way that can produce outcomes? And and it also reminded me of how I think that the word manipulation, which if you look at the definition is to change
Yes.
the conditions of something, is a word that I've given a bad rap. So I thought that was really interesting. And for me, when speaking to an organization, of course, I have to think about how I am framing the story so that the message is understood. And there's very little difference to that. But I was saying that is okay, politics not. And so it was a very, very helpful frame. I really appreciate it. So thank you for that perspective. Yeah.
I think there's something to be said for, as I was listening to you, Peter, right, and just sort of coming in to the conversation around what Niven was saying, but also what you just said, Peter, right? Like there's this whole notion of like how we sort of assimilate and where this fits into the organization. Like some of what you're talking about is like leader capability. All right. And this notion of how I engage or how I frame things, right? Which could really come down to a competency around communication or around, pick another one. And then separate from that is, and in my lack of self-awareness, right, to what Linwood was saying, and just more sort of the overarching theme of self-awareness, if I don't possess that as a part of my leadership capability, then exactly what you said, Peter, is what's going to happen. That negative, right, tone around all of these, right, that's what comes up. And so that's the lens through which you start to see things or act on it and engage in it. So I think, and I agree, that might be why something like office politics either gets a bad rap or is so important or is wildly undervalued, pick whatever the case may be. So I thought that alongside our conversations around just change have been some of the most, the ones that have stuck with me the most as I've gone out day to day, like as I think about, all right, well, is this how I want to be? Is this what I want to talk about? I talk about intent versus impact a lot when I am coaching or when I am giving framing to, leaders or people who are looking to kind of grow and develop. And it comes down to helping them just have that awareness of how they're showing up, how I phrase it, how people are experiencing you, right? If you do and say something, and then in the next instance, the person is going to say, tell me about, Peter, tell me about Linwood, tell me, like, what are they saying? Because that sort of falls into all the things that we're talking about. So I think that those are the things that have stuck with me the most as I'm listening to sort of everybody kind of put their thoughts out there, and just wanted to add to that around that and reemphasize the piece around self-awareness, but also some application around exactly why it can be received to the T the way Peter just described it, because I've seen that, and it can cloud all types of leadership judgment and ability. So
that's a great point.
Plus 10 to what you all just said.
Yeah, that's it. I was just thinking about the relationship, the correlation between office politics and change management from this perspective, right?
Yeah.
So I remember during the change management, we had some commentary in the room from our audience, and they were talking about, well, I'm not a part of the decision. I'm not a part of the process. I'm basically just executing what I'm told, et cetera. And so it just came to mind that if you want to be a part of that conversation, part of that is learning how to play the politics so that you can get into some of those conversations. And, so I was just thinking about like how else, our audience can use some of this information to help themselves through some of the situations that you might be having on the job. So I wish I had a lot of this wisdom before. I've been in corporate America for 30 years or so. I know I don't look it. But I've been around for a long time and have learned some lessons the very hard way. But just thinking about like the way that we could put some of these things to use, I want to make sure that I say this to the folks that are listening, especially for those of you who may be new to the workforce or interns, or you're just coming in. So we have the benefit of knowledge and experience because we've been through so much. But what we're sharing with you are things that, and honestly, it really doesn't matter where you are in your career. You could really apply it tomorrow. And that's why I wanted to start off with like what my plan is. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of the year, y'all. I'm just telling you this is what's happening because there's so much truth to. There was a experience that Peter shared that really stuck with me, and it was, you were talking about the COO experience, and I was thinking about proximity and proximity bias. I was thinking about all of those things, and what I was taking away from that was a reminder for myself. I'm in a lot of rooms, and I know that I've lost opportunities because I was misaligned. I didn't have the relationships. You know, I wouldn't allow myself to quote play the game. I'm just telling you what I used to do, right?
Mhm.
I didn't want to do those things. I didn't want to really network. I didn't want to speak up. I didn't want to share my ideas because I thought people might think it's crazy. I literally locked myself out of those opportunities and thought, well, if I know this one person, if my boss knows how amazing I am, I will surely get promoted. And that is not the game. You know?
The higher you go, the less that.
Oh my
likely that
gosh,
is.
less likely. So having the benefit of knowledge and experience that we have, and we're sharing this with you, I hope for those of y'all who are younger, or maybe you're the parent of someone who's just started their first job, this is why y'all need to come to People Rising. Because this is the kind of knowledge that I think would truly help someone going into the workforce, or maybe you're a manager and you have a younger team you're trying to connect to. These are the kind of conversations that I think would help. But that experience, Peter, that you shared, it's really stuck with me. And that's part of why I was like, that's it. I'm no longer hiding. And I'm not gonna, I'm no longer gonna be that person who's not gonna network because you know what I mean? I'm not doing that anymore. That is a part of my change management plan.
The word you used, Shelley, proximity.
Yeah.
Is massive.
Yeah.
It's massive. I have a fellow, he's a CPO or chief people officer in my network. And in his byline, he literally said, when he introduces himself, he literally says, what my goal is to be able to build proximity. Wow. So that we are not as far away from people, resources, knowledge, understanding, whatever that looks like, so that we can do more. And I think that's a lot of what has been so fantastic about People Rising, because the things that we are doing or looking to inspire creates proximity so that we can solve problems, so that we can provide support, so that people know that, oh, you're dealing with that too? Great. Now I've got a reason to kind of find my tribe. This becomes the tribe that you want to be a part of and begin to find, but stay connected to. And I don't know that we talk about proximity enough in this way, right? And so when we think about all of these things, change management is directly tied to leadership capabilities. It's also directly tied to these other things, right? But they're not as far apart as we think, right? Proximity allows us to be like, oh, I can get to a Shelley, I can get to a Linwood, right?
That's right.
But it has to be a part of the conversation. And I just don't know that we have had a chance to stop. So what I appreciate about this particular CPO is that he leads with that. It is a part of his leadership fabric. Everybody who knows him does it. And he happens to be the CPO for a really amazing piece of HR tech that's out there. So, but the HR tech is about creating proximity, right? It's in the talent acquisition space. So it's all about bringing people in, their knowledge, their information in, to be able to then add value to whatever organization they're coming into, right? And so, when you said that, I was like, that is so true, right? We're not as disconnected. And if we talk about this notion of proximity to solve problems, proximity to be able to provide support, it almost changes your mindset, which is something I think we should talk about here on People Rising today. But like, we need to have a conversation around the mindset of leaders, or the mindset around culture, because I think that then breaks down some of the misnomers and might help create some of that proximity that is very much missing.
Oh, hold on, Peter, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Peter.
Thank you. The dog was barking. That hates that FedEx driver. I think that mindset ideas, and I don't know if you're familiar with the work of the Arbinger Institute, but they out of Brigham Young, but they've done some really, really brilliant work on mindset. And one of the things that I've learned from them, which is really interesting, is we all know that behavior dictates our actions.
Yes.
But what dictates our behaviors that we
Mindset.
have accessible? And it's all mindset.
Yes.
And that was really, really interesting to me. And I think that also ties in something that Lenwood speaks about a lot, is the need for organizations to flatten. And I think in that increasing proximity and access, but I think it goes all ways. And I was thinking of a coach that I know was doing a session in London with a group of it was the portfolio company of a VC firm, and the CEOs were all really disheartened. It was hard to get money. It was hard to get clients. This is a rough time. And I've been working on an idea for an exercise using the hero's journey, for going through hard time. And if you look at the 7 stages of the hero's journey, but what the exercise is really putting yourself in the middle. So the 2 big struggles, there's the going into the cave, if you remember the scene in Empire Strikes Back where Luke Skywalker goes in the cave, and Yoda said, is what's in there, only what you bring in. And and then which prepares us for the struggle that we're about to face. And so if we're able to picture that, and I'll get to the point, forgive me, but if we're able to picture ourselves in those 2 middle stages of the hero's journey and position it like, oh, this struggle that we're facing, it's all what we're supposed to do in order for us to be able to accomplish our goal. So that's something I had been working on for a while in my head. And she said, like, hey, do you have anything for me today? And I did not have time to write this out nor research it in that day. But my friend Chat Gibbet, helped me out with it, and I was able to put together. Now, it was my work, but I didn't have time to go through each step of the process, so I was able to outline it, say the result I wanted, and a process was created. And I was able to edit it really quickly. So instead of something taking me 7 hours, it took me like 20 minutes, and that's what we're facing. Now in this world, the ability to develop and plan, infinitely faster, that is accessible, that all is required is a good idea.
Yeah, I love that.
Right? That's it. Right. And so how do we as organizations take advantage of that? Well, it really has to be by flattening our hierarchies and really creating strong networks within that, which I think is really important. And our ability to understand how to communicate most effectively as people throughout the organization and all parts of whatever hierarchy might remain is so critical to that.
Absolutely love it. I mean, you guys, it was a round robin of the just one of the reasons why I sought you out to participate on this LinkedIn Live to help people as they go through this journey. For those who have joined and maybe weren't here for the first episode, I did talk about the genesis of the idea, which was maybe 6 or 7 years ago now, where I had to go through a personal transformation as I was moving from being a corporate attorney to an entrepreneur. And I started looking at digital transformation and studying what large organizations were doing, how they were changing their business models, Microsoft in particular. And I started to think about, what is really going to matter as technology begins to evolve. And I realized that the challenge was not the technology, but the people. And helping people to make this change. Because, Peter talked about how something that maybe would have taken him 7 or 8 hours took him 20 minutes to do because of some technology. Well, when we apply that to the market, we understand that people who are able to prompt artificial intelligence effectively and organizations who are able to mobilize groups of people to do that effectively, they'll be able to move much faster than other organizations, particularly if they learn how to work better together. When you combine those three factors, you get incredibly fast organizations. Okay. And so when you think about this democratized or technology that everybody has, anybody can use, you can get the best version of Chat Gibbet.
Well, I was going to say, I love that new name.
You can get the best version, the same thing that everybody else is using, the multimillionaire and the person who has an entry-level position, $20 a month. Same technology. Okay, when you have that kind of widespread use, what remains that can differentiate an organization and help you to differentiate is your ability to relate to other people.
Yeah.
Relationships in a knowledge-based network economy. Who you know and who knows you, and your ability to form relationships quickly and turn those relationships into solutions, solving things together. That's incredibly valuable, unbelievably valuable. So anyway, that's a little background on kind of what led me to do this and why we focus so much on the people stuff and why we named this thing People Rising.
There's a great comment about our best friend. So ChatGTP is leveling the playing field. And can I just say also, so one of the sessions that we had when we talked about AI and then Peter came in and saved us. I was, until that session, I wasn't trying to learn about GPT. I really wasn't. I still had some anxiety around it, meaning I wasn't quite sure how I could use this. Is this, I mean, I just had those. I used to be an engineer back in the day. So sometimes I overthink anything related to technology because that's just the nature of the beast. But one of the things that I picked up in that session with Peter actually hit on the note that Lenwood just said about literally flattening things, right? And so now I had a better understanding of how I could use technology to make improvements in my own productivity, saves me a ton of time, and I'm not losing myself. It's still me, it's still my idea. It's just a tool that helps me to generate what I need, which happened to be content. And then I'm going back and customizing it. So I'm still doing the work. But what I really appreciated, Peter, was sharing that just basic understanding that this is an example of how you could use technology to do X. And so, as I was thinking about like organizations that are having very complex problems, and for those of y'all who are sitting around the room looking at the same people you're looking at for the last 20 years and not considering, different methods of collaboration or how you are approaching your approach to that problem and considering technology as a way to do that. This is one of those, come to whoever moment for you to really think about, how am I going to make a difference? How am I going to do things differently in a way that helps our organization? How do I create value? How do I solve the problem? How do I meet my stakeholder needs? All those things, but think about the role that technology plays. So just like I had to come off that old way of thinking, right? I'm just encouraging those of y'all, and I'm throwing this out. It doesn't matter what level you are in the organization. You might be the analyst and you're the one that has the great idea and you're taking advantage of technology to bring a solution to your team, and then you're collaborating, et cetera, and it feeds that way. You might be the HR leader or whoever it is, right? But it's just being mindful that there are ways to get what we need done, but there's technology and innovation to help us do it.
Well, but also, and I think the thing that we need to recognize is the role of expertise. Now that ChatGPT has been there, it's not that it's irrelevant, but it is less important. So that distance between complete ignorance and mild competence, is almost non-existent.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of things like that I have been able to do to get ChatGPT. So, and a lot of my methods is have it question my assumptions. Is ask me questions. Like I have one that says, ask me for my topic for my marketing. And then ask me questions, use the answers to write an outline, and then continue to ask me questions until I feel we're done. But I've used that prompt for so many things. Like I have to prepare for a sales meeting. I've edited it, for that, or I need to come up with, ideas for this. And I think that is, and so what I've been able to do is I might have mentioned, I am a crappy salesperson. I always thought I was a great salesperson. No, people just like me. So it's easy for me to talk to people and then they buy from me. But, as far as methodology and now that I am, I don't have a staff to fill up for my just Grand Canyon size ignorance. I can use ChatGPT. And so there's so many things that I would have had to hire a consultant. And what I've realized is that is a tool that it will significantly delay my need to hire my first and second employee, or perhaps my second, but it will accelerate my need to hire my third, which is a fascinating endeavor. Yeah.
That's powerful.
Powerful stuff. There was something that we were talking about. Actually, I think it was Shelley. You were talking about something. Actually, when we talk about relationships and how important our humanity is to what is happening in the future.
Yeah.
I just wrote down here psychological safety.
Yeah.
Like that just becomes so important to how we're working together in organizations. I mean, I really don't think it can be overstated because we all have areas that we need improvement. We all have areas, I'm saying the same thing a different way. We all have areas of weakness. And so creating an environment where you're building trust and you're not fearful about what you're sharing or how you're sharing. It's just critically important, I think, to focusing on delivering outcomes. We have to work towards, okay, so when the biggest issue is working together, the friction becomes human interaction.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yes.
So how do we remove that friction from human interaction? And that's where I think psychological safety comes in, and trust.
Yeah. And it's been around. So psychological safety being the it word for 2023. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry,
It's psychological safety 2023 or 2022?
2022.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah. The it word for 2022. But we used to call it other things like trust, right? And as a matter of fact, I remember our first meetup, that word literally, we talked about trust. We talked about everything being centered on trust. That was how we kind of kicked things off. So when I think about psychological safety, I also think about, just being mindful, like fear-based solutions don't work.
What based solutions?
Fear. So fear-based solutions don't work. I don't care how you slice it. If your solution is coming from a place of fear, it's not going to work, right? So when I think about psychological safety, there have been situations where I knew that if I spoke up, and I think I might have shared this in one of our episodes, that I leaned towards the general population decision, or the populist decision,
yes, I remember
knowing
that.
that was the wrong thing. I knew in my gut, but because I wanted to appease her, I just didn't want to cause problems. And I really just wanted the project to end, to be honest, right? I just wanted to let's be done with it. I didn't want to be that person. But I realized also that I wasn't in an environment where I felt comfortable sharing my feedback. So, and I've been in those situations time and time again where you just, I don't feel comfortable giving my feedback. And I'm going to tell you something that is exhausting. If you're a natural problem solver, that fear-based decision that you made will come back and bite you. Okay? Because someone's going to look at you and say, but well, why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you raise your hand? So what I've actually done just for myself, I am very comfortable in any room that I'm in because I understand the value that I carry. So because my purpose and my value is kind of in sync, I know that if you're calling me into the room, you're calling me in there for a reason. So I'm credible showing up, right? So if I'm credible showing up and you're asking for my opinion, I don't have to, filter it. I know that you're valuing my opinion. So whether or not you want to take my advice or not is on you. But I'm not gonna allow the environment. It could be other people, you know what I mean? Your mindset. I'm not gonna allow the environment to stop me from giving you the value that you paid for. Right? So that's the other way to look at psychological safety. But I still think it goes back to trust, because if you hire someone, regardless of what level they are in the organization, and there is zero trust, then it's not going to work anyway. You're never going to take their feedback, their input. There is no safety. They're not going to feel comfortable sharing their perspectives at the end of the day. So it really does go back to trust. And I really wish we would go back to just the word trust, because we have overused this word and complicated psychological safety now, where I'm not sure that we all understand what it means. Where at the very base, the baseline of it is trusting among people, right? It's our relationships. To your point, Linwood.
Well, the new word is belonging.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, y'all. So that's 2023.
Yeah, that's yeah. And which is, I think, actually an interesting point. And all of this brings us really nicely back to the work that Ed Henson does.
Yeah.
With getting projects out of stock, because that's really what he talks about, is creating an environment of trust and perhaps belonging. But I think that is, I like the word belonging, and it came up to me in a New York Times article highlighting the work of a DEI specialist named Carith Foster. And she has a background in stand-up comedy. And I think really takes a different approach, because I think, I don't want to speak for all white men, but I know that with my own experience, confronting and having conversations about institutionalized racism is terrifying, not because we're afraid someone will think that we're racist, but they will find out. Right. Yeah. And what she does, from what I said, this article, and I think I just occurred to me, we should get her as a guest. And so,
yes, please, please make that happen.
I don't know her, but I'll try and find her. But what she does is she does a humorous exercise where she has the room close their eyes and goes through scenarios where people are making racist assumptions, or likely to make racist assumptions. And if you've ever, I'm going to raise your hand. And when she's done, the whole room has their hand up. And I think that's a great instance of looking at, because if we belong in an organization, we have to belong, warts and all.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, just in my own faith community, when I look at white folks who are standing in the way of racial justice efforts, it's not because they're awful Nazis. It's because they're freaking terrified.
Fear.
And so I really like the idea of looking at that concept of belonging. because the truth of the matter is what we're trying for companies is, yes, come into the tent. You belong. Now doesn't mean you don't need to be appropriate, right? But with this idea that we are humans, like there's no bad or good humans. We all just do good and bad things, right? So
you got to belong to yourself first before you can belong anywhere else.
Yes, I think
you write that down.
I mean, like that. I mean, but you do. There's this whole notion of, I mean, and say what you want about the words, right? You may love belonging, you may not. People may love psychological safety, they may not. But when you look at the uptick of what people now have to be and present in the workplace and deal with, there are no more distinct lines in the sand, right? The unrest that happens out there is affecting who we are. And then in some way we are now being, or there was an expectation that had to stay outside of the workplace, the professional environment, whatever it is. But then if you're distracted by that because there's some relational impact or there's some relational, connection there, then you can't be your authentic self at work, because you can't say that, well, I feel this way about this, because now there's the fear. Here we go back to that.
That's right.
Now there's this fear that rises up and is like, well, I can't do this because now I am going to be seen.
That's right.
Right. And Peter just said that now it is going to come out that I am racist, that I have these views, that I'm affiliated in whatever way, right? Let's just use that race, that I'm affiliated in whatever way. Then in your mind, you're like, well, I don't feel safe. So now I have to like shut down. Now I can't talk. Now I can't open up. Now I'm not going to contribute. Now I'm not going to do anything except stay in my box because I don't feel safe. I think sometimes psychological safety is our own way of saying, in my mind, my narrative will not be accepted among the general population. And so I'm just going to stay quiet. I'm not going to do anything. Right.
That's right.
And then when you stay quiet, when you don't contribute, then the perception is, well, now I don't trust this, or I don't feel that, or I can't, right? I don't, but people are truly saying, I don't belong, right? They believe that they don't belong. And if we're really aligned to inclusion, so I'll just add that word to our board of words that we're throwing out here today, right? We talk about inclusion, right? Inclusion says it doesn't matter if you assimilate with a certain mindset of thinking. Inclusion says there's space for all of it, even if everybody does not agree, even if that's not what everybody adopts, right? I use this phrase, this analogy all the time when I talk about diversity and inclusion. I talk about diversity being the beach. There's the sand, and there's different types of sand. There's wet sand, there's dry sand, there's shells, there's whatever the case may be. But we can put that in a box, and at some point diversity stopped being this nebulous thing and started being something that we could categorize.
Yeah.
And then we move to inclusion, and inclusion is the ocean, right? Because eventually the sand goes into the water. But then what happens? There's that massive dip off, and there's the parts of the ocean where the sunlight cannot get to. But that doesn't mean that there's amazing life and brilliance and evolution happening in the dark parts of the ocean. If we then can open ourselves up to say, even though I don't know about the dark parts and I've got some fear about going down there, what will I discover about myself, about this thing that I don't know? If I can then put that aside and go peruse this, what can I bring back to the surface and bring light to? And I don't know that we are ready to dig into the depths of that, but the unrest that takes place out there, it pushes us there. And then we are forced to now say, well, I've got to have these conversations, because we're now telling people to bring their authentic selves to work. But some of that authenticity is rooted in,
as long as it's
right. As long as it's conditional. It's conditional.
But that authenticity is rooted in some of that darkness that I have not explored.
That's right. That's right.
And so because I've not explored it, I don't know what to do with it. Now I'm going to be exposed. Again, we're now back to this whole narrative, right? But inclusion says all of that is welcome, no matter what. There's space for all of it on this earth to exist. And so it's this sort of fundamental thing around, what are we buying into? You do have to belong to yourself. And in belonging to yourself, can you exist? You do, right? As long as you belong to you, you're included in everything that's going on, even if I don't like it.
That's right.
Or it's not my choice, right? I don't want to belong to that camp, to that narrative, to that mindset. You can, and it shouldn't stop my shine, right? And I say this to people all the time, right? Kim, the shine that I have on myself is like galaxy level. I know that, and I'm okay with that, and I want to be comfortable with that. But that doesn't mean I can't be next to Shelly or Peter or Linwood, because their shine is just as galaxy level as mine. There's space for all of it to exist, right? And it doesn't change anything that I think, but that goes back to mindset and other things we were talking about, which is also change management. And a whole bunch of things that, right? Listen, y'all, the short term is just show up to People Rising, because you're gonna
I know. That's true.
Back, right? Come back, right? But there's this level of, it's opportunity. Like, are we willing to dive into the darkness and do a little bit of discovery there for all of these things to just kind of take root, for how we want to evolve, especially as a workforce, as a society, whatever that looks like, right? That's how people rise, when you do the work in that way.
And one of the things that I was thinking of with Shelly, your example, I don't think there's a CEO on the planet who wouldn't be horrified that the key information to keep a project from going off the rails was unable to be sent.
Right.
And so when we hear that's the soft stuff, like, no, it ain't.
Right?
That's really
It
hard.
is. It's really hard. I mean, I challenge anybody to, like, come on, CEO, step into this work.
That's
right?
right.
I will be the CEO and you can come do the soft stuff. How about that?
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, this is a fascinating conversation. I mean, this is brilliant conversation.
Katina's comment.
Yes, my shine is galaxy level.
Listen,
I love
Katina,
that.
That's right.
Listen, because if you don't believe that you're listen, I'm talking about Andromeda, Milky
That's
Way,
right.
and whatever else is beyond that. You put those two together and look at it from the right. That is massive
right.
shine. You have to start there.
You gotta own it.
Come on, Shelly.
You gotta own it. I'll give a whole sermon. Y'all know it. You've gotta absolutely own it. And that's why, for me, I appreciate the work that's being done at organizations where they're making room for belonging and for psych safety, or whatever the term is. Okay. I appreciate that organizations are trying to build environments where you can kind of show up. I also realize that there's a level of me, there's a part of me that can't authentically show up on the job, because I'll end up preaching, and that's not what I'm getting paid for. Okay. But the thing for me is, like, if you sign a contract to work with our organization and you've met our values at the door, and our values say that we are inclusive, right? Our values say that we're innovative. Our values say we're collaborative, and you're in that environment and that's not what's happening. This impacts psychological safety.
Yes.
This impacts your ability to perform. This impacts the way that you flush things out as a corporate citizen organization. This is a way that you show up, within your wonderful ESG and CSR report. And I'm saying all this as a practitioner, and I understand the game. But you have to be clear up front, if you're trotting out these things, that they're more than just a program. It's more than just something that's amazing on your website. Absolutely. It's more than a social media campaign, and it's more than a D&I initiative. And it's more than stuff you give to talent acquisition and recruiters to say, this is who we are. You have to actually be. And for employees, you have to be comfortable knowing that they selected me. So when I talk to folks who join the organization, and a lot of times I'll get people that want to meet me because of the nature of what I do, and they want to get to know the organization. And I'll just say, wait, you realize how amazing you are? Like, do you know what value you bring? If you don't understand the value you bring, you come back to me next month. We literally have to start from a person perspective, right? Yes. To say, this is why we hired you. So shifting from the things that we have done over time with employer brand and recruitment marketing, all those things, to really drilling in that this is the value you bring. But as an employee, you have to own that. So when I tell you, I know my value, right? And I literally own it.
I think what Peter always brings a level of self-awareness to our conversation. I mean, and I admire this entire group. And every time we talk, Peter owns it. He's like, let me tell y'all about me and my lack of, or my whatever, or my awareness that I don't know. Right. But Peter does that so comfortably. And it makes me want to be like, well, say more about that, Peter, so I can help you balance that out from a perspective of somebody who is not like you at all. And I think values is another thing, like, that this community should definitely talk about. Like, we should think of it as a topic, because it is foundational to a lot of the things that we're talking about today. So I would submit that as a potential conversation topic for us, because I think that we talk about it, but it's very surface level. It's not.
It is. Yeah.
It's not.
Well, and where it comes from, Kim, is I was a horrible person to work for. Like, just the worst.
I can't even imagine that.
Me neither.
That's a testament to you haven't done your work, Peter, because I don't experience you that way at all. And
that's right.
It's taken a lot of work. It's taken a lot of work, and I still have a lot of work to do. But it was. I literally. I mean, it was horrifying, the level of turnover that I've had in my organizations in the past. And it was like, oh, this is me. Yeah, this is not, that and some other things that had happened before that allowed me to come to that. But yes, I was hoping we'd get to Dr.
I wanted to make sure that we got this up, because when people comment, we definitely want to share it and talk about it.
I think that.
But what she said before is that it's leveling the playing field, and I think that I mean,
for some reason,
OpenAI.
Why can't you see?
Oh, because it's really long.
It's right before.
Yeah,
that.
I know.
Yeah.
How? Okay, well, let me see. Okay, so she says, I'll read it. It says, okay, I see Chat GPT, much like any grandmother, may have envisioned the toaster oven and microwave back in the day. It saved time, and you can use the stove for more complex meals, fewer burns, and took up less space in the kitchen. When we use technology to streamline processes, improve communication, and align partnership, organizations can create more with less, and we who embrace the change can thrive rather than merely surviving. Beautifully said.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much for making that comment.
Yeah, it's really brilliant, and I think it's interesting because the Sam Altman-Smith, the CEO of he talks about like, oh, we're gonna take all the money. We're gonna take all the money. And we're going to set the structure that we're going to create universal income, but it's going to come from OpenAI. And I love him and I love what he's doing, but like, are you freaking kidding me? Like you're going to take, no way. It's just like, and this, I remember in third grade, people talking about how the Japanese were going to buy up America and own the world. Yeah. And and Amazon's going to do it, and we were worried if Microsoft was going to do it. Never happens, because just change is constant, and we don't have the ability to see everything, and organizations get siloed. Period. And it'll happen with OpenAI. Yeah, and somebody else will come out from their periphery and kick the crap out of it. Yeah, I mean, who'd have thought that Bing would be coming up on Google's heels?
Oh, I know.
Right?
Out of nowhere, right?
Yes.
I said something. Okay, I have this thing where in today's world, the best defense for an organization is actually an offense. You can change the battlefield with innovation. It's so critically important. Certainly underappreciated. Just like the speed of things and how they will, how things are going to speed up. Coming out of this slowdown, retrenchment, whatever you want to call it, recession, there are going to be organizations that they will move at blistering speed. I saw a expert say that they expect the first $1 billion company with only 3 people to come out of this environment. So that's a testament to the accessibility of the resources that you need to innovate. Really, really, really critically important. And then, before we leave, I want to just speak some encouragement into people out there. If you have been discouraged in your job, if you have been discouraged in the progress that you have been able to make through your career, I don't care where you are in your career, I want to encourage you to follow People Rising and invest in yourself, because the environment in which we live The market in which we live is going to be it's just going to be so tight. Companies are going to be looking for people, and there's you'll have the ability to change yourself so that you can do a job that maybe you couldn't do before. You'll be able to do, or get into a position that you might not have been able to do if you make the right moves. But the important thing is that you take the initiative to invest in yourself. So important. Every Saturday, I do a video. If you want to follow me, every Saturday I do a personal development or leadership development video, which speaks to my personal development journey and leadership development journey. I, like Peter, was just an absolutely horrible person in the past. Absolutely horrible. I'm much better now, but I still have a ways to go. So I just share my journey and the tools that I've used, books that I've read, principles, so that can help you as well.
That's awesome, and I do watch those. I'm a fan.
I went over the minute and a half that we had. So we've shut down on LinkedIn, but we're still going on Facebook and other platforms.
Yes.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks so much for showing up today. What a great show. You guys were awesome. All right. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.